Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Before we dive into today's deep and eye-opening topic, do me a quick favor. Hit the like button. Share this video with your friends and family. And drop your thoughts in the comments, especially what you think is coming. We're not just talking about theories, we're talking about patterns. In this video, we'll uncover a strategic picture that's already unfolding in the US and could reach other parts of the world, including Europe, by 2027. You'll gain two powerful advantages. Understanding what's happening now, especially in American politics and tech. And seeing what might come next, before it actually happens. In times like these, information is power. If you know what's ahead, you can protect yourself, and maybe even find ways to thrive when others are caught off guard. So get ready. Because what's coming is already here. What's arriving isn't just a change in policy, it's a transformation in how control and power are exercised. We're witnessing the early stages of a new Patriot Act, an evolved and more sophisticated version that blends political strategy with technological dominance. This isn't just about undocumented immigrants or street protests, it's about using fear to justify building a powerful surveillance infrastructure that can later be turned inward, against citizens themselves. At the heart of this system is the integration of massive databases, AI platforms, and federal agencies like ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, operating under the banner of national security. But behind the scenes, private tech giants are being given the keys. Technologies that were once developed for monitoring enemies abroad are now being used to track, profile, and manage domestic populations. And just like in 2001, the narrative begins with a foreign threat, and ends with the erosion of civil liberties at home. So the question isn't if this will affect us, it's how soon and how far they plan to take it. A quiet but powerful shift has taken place in the United States. Palantir Technologies, a private data analytics company, has been handed control over some of the nation's most sensitive databases. Following the departure of a high-profile tech figure from the government, Palantir was chosen to manage a massive federal data infrastructure, one capable of integrating personal and behavioral data across multiple agencies. This move is far from accidental, it signals a deeper alliance between big tech and state power. With close ties to military and intelligence sectors, Palantir is not just a contractor, it's a core architect of the emerging surveillance network. It's already collaborating with ICE, helping to develop platforms that track undocumented individuals in near real time, and this same system is easily adaptable for broader population monitoring. The company's influence has grown beyond technology, its executives sit on global decision-making bodies and shape not only security policy but how freedom itself is defined and managed. And if that's not unsettling enough, what happens when the tools built to control outsiders are turned on insiders? At first glance, the clash between former President Donald Trump and Elon Musk might seem like just another high-profile feud. But if you look deeper, it reveals a calculated shift in influence. Shortly after Musk distanced himself from the administration, Palantir Technologies was handed the reins of the US federal data system. This wasn't coincidental. It marked the consolidation of a new power base, one centered not on flashy billionaires, but on quieter, more entrenched technocrats. Those who attempt to analyze this conflict without mentioning Peter Thiel, Palantir, or J.D. Vance are missing the full picture. The so-called fallout with Musk may be nothing more than a strategic repositioning, allowing a more compliant infrastructure to take shape, one that aligns with the long-term goals of centralized surveillance and data-driven governance. While Musk was once seen as a disruptor, the real disruptors now wear suits in Washington and engineer platforms beneath the radar. But what if this rivalry is a carefully staged performance, one meant to keep public attention elsewhere? Whenever someone brings up uncomfortable facts or dares to question official narratives, they're often met with a familiar phrase, "That sounds like a conspiracy theory." But have you ever asked where that term actually comes from? The label conspiracy theory was coined and promoted by the CIA in the aftermath of President Kennedy's assassination, not as a tool for truth, but as a weapon to discredit anyone who questioned the official story. It wasn't about finding facts, it was about shutting down the conversation. Since then, the phrase has been strategically used to marginalize critical thinkers and discourage independent analysis. Ironically, many of the sources accused of being conspiratorial often cite mainstream publications like the New York Times, Wired magazine, and The Guardian, hardly underground outlets. So the next time someone dismisses a serious issue with that label, ask them this: who invented the term conspiracy theory? When? And why? Because once you know the origin of the label, you might begin to question why certain ideas are buried and who benefits from keeping them buried. Most people think of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, as just a deportation agency. But its origin story reveals a far more strategic purpose. Created in 2003, shortly after the September 11, 2001 attacks, ICE was part of a sweeping reorganization of U.S. security under the Department of Homeland Security. Its stated mission was to protect national borders and track down undocumented individuals. But in reality, it was designed as a tool of internal control, capable of targeting not only outsiders, but also dissenting voices within. ICE operates under the shadow of the Patriot Act, armed with expansive powers that most citizens don't even realize exist. Today, it's not just deporting people, it's tracking, profiling, and feeding data into platforms powered by companies like Palantir. And once those systems are in place, they can be repurposed at any time. Here's the question that should haunt us all. What happens when the tools built to track the enemy start being used on you? When chaos erupts in the streets, most people assume it's spontaneous, the result of frustration, anger, or political tension. But what if it's not? Recent demonstrations in cities like Los Angeles show signs of something far more orchestrated. Witnesses describe unknown individuals, not part of the original protests, suddenly appearing and instigating violence. Bricks, stacked neatly on street corners a day before any unrest began, raise deeper questions. These are classic signs of the use of agent provocateurs, individuals planted in crowds to incite conflict, provoke law enforcement, and justify extreme government responses. The pattern is familiar. Spark chaos. Trigger public fear. Use fear to pass new laws and expand surveillance. But why stage unrest in the first place? Because when people are scared, they accept control. They trade liberty for security. And here's the twist: those enforcing the crackdown? The same people who helped start the fire. Behind every camera, every database, and every algorithm, there's a power structure that benefits. The emerging system of surveillance and societal control isn't just political, it's deeply corporate. It's fueled by big tech, funded by big money, and silently approved by Wall Street and Silicon Valley. From artificial intelligence to behavioral analytics, these forces are building a digital infrastructure where data becomes dominance. And the public? Distracted by the noise. Because while people argue in the streets, quiet deals are made in boardrooms. This isn't about safety. It's about ownership of narratives, movements, and eventually, minds. And here's the most dangerous part. The tools of control are being sold as solutions. The more unstable the world becomes, the more these systems are demanded. But ask yourself, if chaos is profitable, who's really invested in peace? While politicians take the spotlight, real power often hides in the shadows, and few figures illustrate this better than Peter Thiel. A billionaire investor and tech strategist, Thiel co-founded Palantir Technologies and has secured deep influence in US politics, military contracts, and federal data infrastructure. He's been described as the architect behind key surveillance tools and the silent force shaping national security agendas. But Thiel's reach doesn't stop at the White House. He sits on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group, an elite gathering often accused of guiding global policy from behind closed doors. Ironically, many who support populist, anti-elite politics are unaware that Thiel, one of the most powerful backers of that movement, is himself embedded in one of the most secretive globalist organizations. So, is he a strategic genius working for reform, or the mastermind of a technocratic empire? Because when the same man controls the technology, the funding, and the ideology, you have to ask: is he leading the revolution, or writing its script? When people talk about the elite, most imagine vague notions of wealth and politics. But the Bilderberg Group makes that concept real. This exclusive, invitation-only gathering brings together politicians, CEOs, military strategists, media moguls, and technocrats, all behind closed doors, far from public accountability. Among its steering committee members? Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, both deeply involved in Palantir Technologies and the current US surveillance architecture. Supporters of national sovereignty, traditional values, or anti-globalist movements often oppose what Bilderberg represents. Yet ironically, key figures entrusted with America's digital and security infrastructure are themselves active members of this very group. This contradiction raises unsettling questions. If you're fighting that system, why hand it over to the people designing it? And if the same minds are behind both the problem and the solution, maybe it's not a conflict. Maybe it's a blueprint. Total control doesn't always require force. Sometimes, it only takes confusion. Modern systems of influence don't just manage laws or borders, they shape how people think, speak, and react. Through mechanisms like cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias, echo chambers, and the spiral of silence, people are subtly conditioned to reject inconvenient truths and cling to comforting illusions. Once individuals encounter information that contradicts their beliefs, they often shut down, not because the facts are unclear, but because the emotional discomfort is too great. So, rather than investigate, they dismiss, ignore, or mock. And those who speak up? Quickly labeled as extremists, conspiracy theorists, or simply excluded. This creates a society that polices itself, where control doesn't come from above, it comes from within. And the most effective prison is the one you don't realize you're in. On the surface, it's just another budget proposal. But the big and beautiful bill, supported by key political figures, may be one of the most far-reaching legislative moves in recent US history. Buried within its hundreds of pages is a provision that would block state governments from regulating artificial intelligence for the next 10 years. That means unrestricted development of AI technologies, with no oversight, no public debate, and no limits. The bill hands sweeping power to tech conglomerates, effectively allowing Silicon Valley to shape the future of civil liberties, policing, and digital identity. It transforms the US into a testing ground for full-spectrum data governance, where privacy becomes obsolete and algorithms decide who's safe and who's not. And while it's sold as progress, the real cost is control, invisible, untraceable, and permanent. But the question remains, what happens when those who oppose this bill suddenly find themselves at the center of public chaos? In today's world, revolts aren't always spontaneous, some are strategically produced. Recent street protests in cities like Los Angeles show disturbing signs of advanced planning. Surveillance footage and eyewitness accounts reveal something odd: stacks of bricks mysteriously placed near protest zones a day before any demonstrations began. These weren't construction sites. They were setups. Even more suspicious, the quality of footage coming from the street suggests professional involvement, high-definition angles, cinematic framing, and perfect timing. It's as if the unrest wasn't just anticipated, it was being filmed for effect. This pattern echoes earlier events in 2020 and reveals how staged conflict becomes political leverage. The goal? To create fear, rally support for extraordinary measures, and legitimize the use of surveillance and control tools already waiting in the wings. When riots look like rehearsals, who's directing the scene? While federal agencies and tech giants shape the system from above, local leadership often plays a quiet but crucial role, and in Los Angeles, all eyes turn to Mayor Karen Bass. What most don't know is that Bass spent 6 years on the board of the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, a US-funded organization linked to orchestrating civil unrest abroad. Before that, she was a community organizer, actively participating in street protests herself. Now, as chaos erupts in her city, her past connections raise unsettling questions. Could her position, and her silence, reflect alignment with deeper state objectives? When street protests erupt near her office, funded by the same structure she once served, the lines between activism and orchestration begin to blur. And yet, while cameras roll and tensions escalate, the federal government continues to fund the NED, suggesting that the unrest is not just tolerated, it may be strategically encouraged. So, ask yourself, is your mayor a public servant, or a well-placed chess piece? The National Endowment for Democracy, NED, presents itself as a force for freedom, but its real history suggests something far more strategic, and far more disturbing. Created as an extension of the CIA's soft power, the NED has been involved in countless operations abroad, supporting movements that destabilize governments under the guise of democracy. Funded by the US government, it serves as a political scalpel, subtle, precise, and deadly. Now, that same tool appears to be in motion on American soil. With individuals like Karen Bass tied to its leadership, and civil unrest erupting in cities like Los Angeles, the dots begin to connect. The very agency known for provoking uprisings overseas now seems linked to domestic agitation, conveniently timed to justify sweeping legislative and technological controls. And still, taxpayer money keeps flowing to it. So, if the government is funding both the problem and the solution, is it protecting democracy or redesigning it? Sometimes, the future doesn't arrive by surprise, it's broadcast in advance. References to mass unrest, authoritarian crackdowns, and deep social division have been showing up not just in news reports, but in films, magazine covers, and political narratives. Take, for instance, the Civil War movie or the infamous 2025 Economist cover showing a clenched fist in June, symbols that may appear fictional, but eerily align with real-world events. These are more than coincidences. This is what many call predictive programming, planting scenarios in public consciousness so that, when they happen, resistance is dulled. People accept them not as a crisis, but as inevitable. And the forecast? A recreation of the post-9/11 environment, complete with heightened security, emergency legislation, and a digital surveillance state, this time not in response to foreign terrorists, but to internal dissent. So when the story feels familiar, it's because you were already told how it would go. So now, let's turn the spotlight on you. What do you think is really happening behind the scenes? Is all this unrest just spontaneous outrage, or carefully scripted chaos? Are surveillance systems truly built to protect us, or to predict and control us? And if the same hands fund both the unrest and the response, then who's really running the show? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you, whether you agree, disagree, or have your own theories. And if this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button to support more content like this. Share it with friends and family who need to see a different perspective. Because your engagement helps keep these conversations alive, and helps build the next video we'll dive into together. Until then, stay aware, stay sharp, and never stop asking questions.